Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mark's Indy Spotlight. This is episode 7, and with me this week I have the pop star, Johnny Romano.
What's going on,
Johnny,
guys? How you doing?
it's a pleasure to have you, brother.
Thank you, man. I'm glad to be here.
Now, I've known you for quite some time now, probably
Yeah, over a decade,
every,
probably.
yeah, well, it's right there at it, anyways. I know it's at least 8 years.
I can remember a show way back when it was like a sweet potato festival or something like that, and then
Uh,
you were gone for a
the
little while.
Yeah, the Sweet Potato Festival. No, that one was the Pepper Festival,
That's right. That's right. That's what it was, man.
right? And then I was gone for a while, and then the Sweet Potato Festival has been since I've been back.
Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Johnny Romano is another. I use this word with a man that you know very well and tag team with. I said he was a staple in Georgia independent wrestling, and the same holds true for you, my friend. So, without, we're gonna cut right to it. Let everybody know who is Johnny Romano, the pop star.
Oh man, that's a deep question, right? Um, Johnny Romano is a guy at 5 years old that decided he wanted to be a pro wrestler when he turned on the TV and watched 1, 2, 3 Kid um, beat Razor Ramon and take a bag full of cash and run away. I From then on I wanted to do this, and I've been wrestling for this month is 19 years since I had the privilege to step inside a professional wrestling ring, and I like to feel like I got a Caprice Coleman thing going on because even though I'm older, I like to say that I handle myself well to be in my late 30s. You know, I can hang with the younger guys. But yeah, man, I've been around. I always say I'm the guy that was in every locker room, and you didn't notice me until I wanted to be noticed. You know what I mean? I was quiet. I listened, but I've been around a long time, so I've been around a lot of the guys that have taught me a lot. You know, from legends to guys who maybe never made it, but had a lot to offer. So that's me in a nutshell,
Right.
man.
Um, by whom were you trained?
Who was I trained? Okay, so me and my wife was talking about this when she was asking which one are you gonna say. So I always say Dory Funk trained me, and I was with Dory Funk's Funky Conservatory for the better part of 7 years. Um, but it wasn't like he didn't really officially train me, but I got to go to all the seminars and I got paid really well. I didn't pay to go there. I was just a guy that Dory saw bump, and he was like, okay, come on down here. And I was just somebody that would help out with the newer students. But officially, I give credit to Jared Michaels. Uh, when I was 18, I looked up wrestling around me and I found an independent wrestling show running up the street in Tifton, Georgia. I can take you to where the building is. It's been a million things over the years. It's been a church, been a bar, it's been everything in between. But I went to that show. I asked about getting trained, and then for about 3 months, the likes of Jared Michaels, Preston Paradise, uh, Mike Payne beat the living crap out of me for about 3 months. Um, how much I really learned in that time, I don't really know. I think it was more just like, let's see if this kid is still gonna hang. And out of that group, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one still going. So, and then I went on to like other places to get fine tune training and of course kind of along the way just would go to shows and show up early and help with chairs and help with anything and say, hey, do you mind if I roll around a little bit? So if you count that part, there's a bit of everybody from a Ray Lloyd to you know um, uh, Q Ball Carmichael, a bunch of it in between. But Officially, Jared Michaels. Unofficially, Dory Funk Jr.
Then just you just continue to learn more and more from the game from as many people as you can to better perfect your craft.
Right.
So, do you rather work face or heel? Because I know at times I've known there to be a heel Johnny Romano, and then at times that I've known there to be a face Johnny Romano.
Okay. So thinking about that, and this is what I love about doing these podcasts and asking these kind of. I have all these build up thoughts. This is where the Romano ramblings come from. There's a that's such a another deep cut because like if you look at it this way, I remember doing a seminar and Matt Hardy, and he goes, "What are you, a heel or face?" And I said, "I'm whatever you need me to be." And he's like, "Oh, that's a good answer." So you whatever you need to be in that situation, you need to be able to be versatile. I know there's a few people through the years who were never a heel, like a Ricky Steamboat, but you need to be versatile. I would personally say there's no such thing as a real heel anymore because heels are still trying to sell T-shirts. Back in the day, a heel wouldn't care about that because he was getting enough money that I was like, okay, I enjoy being a heel because it lets out natural aggression that I can't let out in a normal basis. It lets a fan let out natural aggression they can't let out on a normal basis because they can't go to their boss and say these things. They can't yell at their
Right.
neighbor who cut their grass. And same with me. If I have some build up frustration, I can't at the shoot job say anything like that. But as a baby face, I always like you know I wrestle my matches as a baby face like Rocky Balboa. I always look at it as I'm trying to fight back, and again, that's where the fan can feel like, okay, I feel like him. I'm struggling to get by paycheck to paycheck, and I'm trying, but he's still getting up. He's still getting up, and then I always learn this thing about looking at a kid to try to like gain that energy, and then that can go through the audience. So both are just very rewarding. In their own way. Of course, more profitable is probably a baby face because you can sell gimmicks. But that's why I say if you're a heel and you say, "Well, I'm a heel, but I sell gimmicks," fans like heels. Well, then you're not really a heel. A real, true heel, people hate you. They suspend disbelief so much that they have lost their sense of okay, I know this is a show, but like I'm so mad at you right now. I want to hurt you. That's few and
Right.
far between in 2022. And I'd say in the last 10, 15 years. So, but both are very rewarding. But if I had to pick one, I'd say a heel is the easiest. It's easy to just be. It's so much easier to get people to hate you. Think about that on a daily basis. You can make an enemy way easier than you can make a friend. So from that point, I'd say a
Oh
heel.
yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. Whom would you say your style of wrestling is most like? Like, where do you draw your influences from and your moveset and all that?
Well, early on, I was like trying to figure out who I was. And I would say maybe a little bit of Mr. Perfect, but Jared kind of was like, bro, that's not you. Let that go. He's like, I see what you're trying to do, but that's not gonna work for you. So as I've got like more fine tuned with the actual psychology, I think as a heel, I would probably say I'm more in the lines of like WCW Jericho with
Gotcha.
come on, baby, and the Jerichoholics. That kind of just you're probably gonna get your ass beat, but you're gonna go out there like I'm the king of the world and you can't tell me anything. Uh,
Right.
so I draw a lot from him as a heel. Psychology wise, I draw a lot from Raven, and like I've watched a lot of his stuff, shoot interviews, like how he conducts things, how he breaks down how a match should be. But then I've always joked that I'm somewhere between. I don't know how much way back, but I'm somewhere between a Johnny Polo and a Raven. I'm like two sides of his character. So it'd probably be like between a Raven and a Jericho, WCW Jericho. Between those two would probably be a good range of my style, psychology, and in ring work, because as I've got older, the high flying is few and far between. So I would say those two
those
guys.
those hurt a little more.
Well, man, my mind won't let me do a lot of things anymore. It's funny how your psyche will work. I don't know if it's having kids or what, but man, I was watching some of my stuff, and I used to do springboard elbows and springboard missile drop kicks. I can't springboard at all. My mental state, I can't do it. I know I can physically do it. I can't mentally try it anymore. I've tried at practice, so. And that's where you reinvent yourself. And that's another reason why I think I've adapted with the Jericho. It's like, all right, what can I do to stay relevant? Since I'm a small guy, but I'm not doing these, flip flops anymore. Or when I do, they're very far in between. What can I do to add that? And that's where the Raven comes into play to add the psychology. So
So at some point at the beginning, you were not the pop star. You were the Italian heartthrob. Am I correct?
you are correct. And if anybody wants to know that legitimate story, Jared, if you ever see this, um, all I ever wanted to be, my favorite wrestler of all time, I think any kid like me from that 90s was either Stone Cold or Shawn Michaels. It was pretty much one of the two during those Attitude Era. I wanted to be Shawn Michaels. I dressed up like him in career day in 7th grade. You can find that picture on Facebook somewhere. It was in the yearbook. So I wanted to find something to adapt to him. So in my head, the heartthrob. I thought that would be the name. And they said, well, you got kind of a tan complexion. Why don't you be like the Italy or something? And I said, they're like, maybe Italian. I said, okay, the Italian heartthrob. There may be some Italian in me, but I don't. I was like Tommy Rich in the FBI and ECW. Is about as far as Italian as it came on. So then they came up with a name. And I was like, and at first I didn't get it. And you would think being the big nostalgia guy, the big 80s guy, but I never clicked. It was just a rib. It was a rib. And they said, we'll call you Tony Maselli. And it didn't, I'm talking about years later, it didn't click with me because you're talking about, yeah, we had internet, but this is pre-streaming stuff. This is actually pre-social media. Tony Maselli was the housekeeper on Who's the Boss. It was Tony Danza, and that was the funny joke that they had. To the point, even years later, Jared thinks it's hilarious that my wife is named Angela, and that was the housekeeper who he kept for everything for Angela, who he ended up with at the end of the show. But it was just this running gag, and I was just happy to be in a ring. Actually, the very first match I ever had, it was only a few weeks of training, and they just needed a body, and they called me Inhumane Timmy Plain, and they put my hair in pigtails. I've had long hair my whole life, and they said, make something like flamboyant. Go home and see what you can do. So I took some pink fabric, cut out a heart, glued it to a shirt, had some like crappy women's pants from Walmart, put something on it, and I came out a Barbie girl. I had no emotion or nothing. I was just happy to be in the ring, and I got my ass beat in. But that was just a running gag. And then the Johnny Romano years later came from me just not wanting to be Tony Maselli anymore. And I was supposed to be, you ready for this one? This is eye opener. And I was like, I'll take the name, but I'm not coming out with that. I was supposed to be a mafia guy, and I was going to be called Bone Thug, like the Bone Thug, Johnny Romano. And I was like, no. We'll try Johnny Romano, and Romano is stuck. I'm called Romano in every element to where I identify with the name, and it's more a part of me than anything. But the other parts that came from it was I was trying to figure out what kind of nickname I could come up with, and I was using the boy band stuff, Spice Girls, and one guy called me the one man boy band because of Heath Slater with the one man band. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But then I wanted to get away from that because I thought, well, I don't want to copy him. And actually, there is an indie wrestler right now using one man boy band now. But then I was like, well, what can I identify? So I started like searching things, and I said, well, why not just the Popstar? And that came from me seeing if I Googled the name Popstar Wrestling, if anything existed yet. And that's the thing guys should do too, is like when you're coming up with names,
Be original.
see if it's already out there. And I know that's hard. That's really hard to do. But oddly enough, Popstar is not connected with anybody. And if you Google Popstar Wrestling, you know, I don't know what that means, but at this
You
stage,
might
my
get that
name popped
video
up.
of Michael Jackson doing the DDT.
That's true. I know that got real popular, but if you type in Popstar Wrestling, I will come up. You know what I mean? Like I will
Yeah.
be in that first page of searches. So that's saying that at least I put that name on the map to where I would hope, out of respect, nobody would just like. I've seen people doing the 90s, and say a guy does totally 90s. But I started with the King of the 90s because somebody said it one day, and I just added that as something else because that's something I identify with. And it works, and it comes off real because I think you know this by now, knowing me. It is like I'm
Oh
listening to
yeah.
this style of music, and I'm watching these 90s sitcoms, and I know all this kind of stuff. So instead of trying to portray like, oh, I'm a magician or I'm a dang, doctor or a whatever, that's not going to feel sincere. Me portraying a nostalgic guy, which is what's in right now, and the pop star. And I always say when people say what a pop star, like, can you sing? I was like, could Jeff Jarrett sing? Like, it's not a point of whether I can sing or not. It's a point of I'm portraying this character that I believe in. So that
Yeah.
comes full circle of where the Italian heartthrob came from.
So that was the metamorphosis of Johnny Romano.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when you watch a show and the character just ain't there yet, if you go back and you go, wow, it's like one of my favorite shows is Park and Recreation. But the first season is garbage. Hate it. But then after that, it's like one of my favorite shows ever because it didn't find its voice yet. And I just hadn't found my voice. I had no real direction. Um, you know, I just didn't know what this was. And a lot of this business is like and I would say it still is to a degree, like a mafia, like, or a fight club. It's like the movie Fight Club. Like, you got to find out about it. We don't talk about Fight Club. Like, you got to figure this out. It's more open now, but figuring out things on your own and figuring out who I am or what I am, unless you're signed to a contract on this indie circuit. Like I tell you, a guy I would say like watching the evolution of him is amazing. Amazing is Effie. I mean,
Yeah.
4 years ago he was wrestling me in a ladder match with no people in the building. To the dude just wrestled Jeff Jarrett and he's got an action figure coming out. That's insane to me. But he evolved his character to what it is today. He started out where he don't, Effie Gibbs.
Right.
Nobody would know who Effie Gibbs is. They know who Effie, and that's where you just got to trial and error things. But yeah, that was the evolution of Romano, and it's still ongoing.
Right. There's been a few people from this whole circuit down here that's kind of that same kind of story, except for the only one that's done bigger than him so far is AJ Styles
I would say,
and
Austin Theory.
yeah, and then you got Alex Kane and them over there in MLW right now, and did you see that they're releasing figures of them also?
Yeah, I know that's the company that does the Lucha figures.
Yeah, Boss Fight Studios.
That's right. That's crazy. And to see my boy, well, I'll still call him Logan Creed, but you know,
Yeah,
Kruger,
yeah.
seeing him, that's
Cool.
amazing because is that how you pronounce? Okay, so I see it and I'm thinking it's a,
It,
well,
yeah, it's like Mads
cruel,
Cruel Kruger or something like
right. Well, I mean, I remember, being on shows with him and we'd wrestle in this carpet factory and, he's just this baby face. And I mean that literally, a baby face. And just to see what he's done is amazing. So I always am happy for my peers, especially the ones that were from my generation that pre social media, us coming up, seeing them elevate to something bigger. Of course, there's a little bit of like, man, dang, there's gonna be some jealousy because you're, oh, that seems cool, but not from a spiteful way. It's just like, oh man, but I'm super happy for all my friends, especially from this Georgia area because I feel like Georgia for a long time has been overlooked for
right.
its
And like
contributions.
you had mentioned that sweet potato show earlier, and that one we had Alex Kane on it also.
That's crazy, ain't it? I think he was on a Albany show, like he did that gauntlet match with Logan.
Like it's
I think he
wild
was.
because like I sit there and think about too is like I was just doing posters with this guy on it, and now you could go to a major wrestling platform and see him there.
It's crazy. You never know.
And
It's some people. Everything's got to line up sometimes, and then, that's something with me. I go through these bouts of depression and anxiety about things, and I think about what ifs, but what ifs will kill you. I have to tell myself, do I think I could have? Yes, put in the right position and everything lined up correctly. Because I had many times I have emails that I just go back and look at that were missed opportunities because pandemic or things that were just out of my hands. But I can't dwell on those things or to take my love for wrestling out altogether. I'm still able to wrestle. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I ever got was John Davis said, never take what we do for granted because you're always 4 feet higher than everybody else when you're inside that ring. And there's always some little kid or even a grown adult who wanted to do this their whole life and circumstances, maybe they're in a wheelchair, maybe it's just something they couldn't do. And to them, we're superheroes. No, we're not John
right,
Cena, but wow, he's doing this. So I'm doing more than I ever thought I would, but I'm proud of my friends, but at the same time, I'm still like, man, come on.
I need
But
a
you can't look
figure.
at other people. Right. That's always the bucket list is to have a figure. Maybe exclusive pro can find something to do. I've heard it's super expensive, but maybe one day that could be down the line, man.
Yeah, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities. But
Yeah.
who would you say your biggest inspirations were coming into the business? Like the reasons why you wanted to wrestle, besides that one moment. Because like
Well,
I'm sure once you were a fan after that initial moment, it was like I'm watching all I can and I'm soaking up
oh yeah,
everything
bro.
I can.
I was watching it beforehand, but not avidly. It's 1993, and I watched that Monday Night Raw, and then from then on, I was like, the Video Warehouse was right down the road, and either my mom would carry me or I'd ride my bike right down the road. This is back when you were okay with your kids going to a store by themselves, and I would
Right,
rent every Friday. I'd rent two wrestling videos to where I had when the new one, because I wasn't able to get pay per views at that point. So when the new one would come out, I'd go up there and wait at the Video Warehouse because it'd only be like two copies, and I'd wait until it got returned. Like I'd wait all day. That's the Uber fan I was. I was buying all the magazines, even the magazines that were like a newspaper, and so I was obsessed with wrestling in general. It was my safe haven from not being in a great family dynamic, being in it wasn't the Brady Bunch, it wasn't even I would have been okay with Married with Children, it was none of that. Um, but I would say like inspiration wise, of course, Sean. Uh, but as I got older, of course, like the 1, 2, 3 kids and the cruiserweights on WCW and making me go like, okay, I don't have to be Hulk Hogan to do this. Uh,
Right.
as I got to be like in high school, and he's not even that far in age from me, so that's crazy. But that he got that spot early on. But I would say like a guy like a Zach Gowen,
Oh
to
yeah.
just show you can do anything that you put your mind to. It's always there's guys that have gave me inspiration as I got older. I would say you know his stuff aside that when he got whatever happened a year and a half 2 years ago, but I would say a James Ellsworth. And the only reason I say that is because it's like he's a guy that you would have he was not supposed to make it, and
Right.
the dude guy, he did everything in a year that most of us would cut our foot off to do.
Oh, what
So
what was his thing? Any man with two hands,
stands a fighting
or something like
chance.
that. Right.
Yeah, yeah, and that's absolutely true. I honestly think had I had the opportunity, things lined up, something could have been different for me. I mean, I worked at Dory's one time, and Jimmy Hart was there, and one of my best pieces, one of the things I hold true, whether he was blowing smoke up my ass or not. He said, "How old are you?" And I told him, he's like, "Man, if you were just a few years older, I would have had you as a regular on WCW Saturday Night." To where it might have been just that end piece where nobody was watching it, but still to hear him say that meant a lot to me, whether it was true or not. So you know inspiration, and then you also, when you talk about inspiration, it comes from a lot of places. Like right now, my inspiration is my kids, because I want to
And
keep pushing hard.
I'm so glad that you said that, because
Why is that,
every
man?
time I ask this question, everybody just thinks on the wrestling side of it, and that just goes to show you, the mind behind Romano, because literally nobody, says, my kids or my family or anything like that. They're always that's what they stick to, is the whole wrestling side of it. But that's what the purpose of these podcast episodes that I'm doing is for people to get a better look at the guys and stuff like that. It just goes to show the complexity of how your mind works.
Well, when you say that, I remember Cassius. I forgot how I think it's McDonald is his last name. Good friend of mine, came from Spinebuster. He gave me one of the best compliments I've ever gotten wrestling, and he said, "You strive to what I do the hashtag wrestling dad, wrestling family. When I'm on the road with my kids or whatever, when I push back the corner, 7 deep or whatever." But he's like, "You are what a wrestling dad should strive to be," and that is the best compliment. I don't care if Ric Flair himself said I was the greatest in the ring. I know he won't, but I'm just saying that was the greatest compliment, because at the end of the day, my body won't allow me. I have reevaluated what I thought of wrestling in 2020. I reevaluated everything, where I stood. I worked on my marriage. I worked on being a father better. And now I'm Johnny Romano, who is a wrestler, instead of the wrestler, Johnny Romano. It's that it's a part of me, but wrestling don't define me anymore, man. I love it.
Right.
I'll be so sad when I can't do this anymore. I love it. Just it's the most. I love it more than any physical thing. I love my family more than anything. But outside of that, pro wrestling will always be something I love dearly. I cherish it. Whatever version of it that is out there, I'll try to support to the best of my ability. But I know at the end of the day, the most important name I'll ever be called is dad and husband. Like to care for those things is way deeper than being a pro wrestler. And if anybody sees that, any wrestler, please take that to heart, man. These bookings will stop. These, you
Right.
know, even if you were making a living at this, you know, what happens when you're coming home and you're just all alone, and it's like, and you end up like Randy the Ram on the Wrestler,
Right.
and yeah, I appreciate that, man, because that's what I strive to be at this stage, is like just that positive person towards those types of things. So
Well, I mean, anytime I've ever seen you on the show, I haven't never seen you not get a reaction out of the crowd, and you're pretty adored by your fans.
and it's that. Well, I strive off of that. When you have any kind of mental health stuff, like with my depression and anxiety, you kick yourself if your match don't go the way you wanted it to, and how your psyche goes. So wrestling can be a drug. It really is. And when you go out there and you don't get the, I guess, the quote unquote high you were looking for, it can kill you. But that's why, like I'd love one day for us to do some kind of documentary about the State Theater at this point, because to me it's my sportatorium. You know,
Yeah, or
it's
the
my
Omni
center
or anything
stage.
like that.
Yeah,
The
it's
Spectrum,
I
all that.
joke I joke I joke about that it's the house that Romano built, but it's not that I don't. I think some people get insulted, but I'm like, it's a work, brother. But what I mean by that is like I love that place because I have put in more time as a performer than any other worker, whether it was with the GWE or now
Or
Exclusive
it
Pro
was
or before that
what
Showtime.
was it before? Yeah, Showtime. I was about to say
Yeah.
because even before I knew of all the rest of that, I heard the stories about Showtime and all that, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I think they said you packed it out with like over 400 some people one night.
Yeah.
Wasn't that you versus Dab Savage, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. And I mean, that place holds a special place in my heart. And I know through the years we, rotated fans out, and, people grow up and, they get away from it, but there's something special about that building. But yeah, anywhere I go, um, and that's another thing where I adapt to. If I go somewhere and I'm not what I'm doing, and that's where the call on the fly has to happen. Is if it's not getting over, okay, this stick is not getting over. My personality, how do I flip this? I've been in a match halfway through it where I was like, hey man, I guess you're the baby face, and we just flipped it. You had to give the fans what they wanted. So that's another thing, is I listen to the fans. I go, okay, that I am not a big fan of cookie cutter wrestling, and what I mean by that is, and I got into an argument with a guy in the back one time. Let's just say he's been an extra a lot at AEW, and he wanted to put this match together where we were all baby faces in a tag match with no story. None of us had a story. We were just putting a tag match together. So there was really no merit to it. It was just part of the show, and it was going to move on to the next thing. When I say he wanted to put like every just I'm like, bro, that's fine. But if we forget it, let's just keep going. Okay. And he got pissed, and to the point that he berated all three of us in the match of like, if you can't do this, you can't work. And that's not the case. It's that I get when you're on TV, things got to be a certain way. But I also feel like there's got to be some element of Jerry Stevens, God rest his soul, used to tell me, Romano, sometimes wrestling has got to look messy. If it looks a little messy, that means it looks real. If it looks a little like, there was a jockeying for strength and, and trying to get to somewhere, that feels real. I always say have bullet points and then let's kind of play things out.
Right.
If you go
Because I
so
mean,
robotic, you forget how to show emotion. Go ahead.
I heard I listen to the Steve Austin podcast a lot, and I heard him say, every show he was on, even he'd be at a monitor or whatever watching the rest of the show, so when he goes out, he knows what not to do.
All right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
we're in a different era,
that's
and I think this newer generation, and no offense, I don't want to catch no enemies, but is a lot more about the car crash element.
right,
I'm more of why did the car crash? What made the car crash?
right,
Because if I ask you to flip it, what's your favorite match? And you told me what your favorite match is, then I would say, why is that your favorite match? When guys study matches, I'm always like, did you study the promos that led up to that match? 99% of the
right.
time they say no, they're just watching the match. I enjoy, yeah, I tell you a match I really liked when I was a kid, and I begged my parents, it's the first pay per view I ordered. And you're going to be like, what? It's just because how they hyped it up. You ready?
Yeah.
1996, no, 1995, Bash at the Beach. No, 1997. I can't remember what year now. I'm so old. But it was Diamond Dallas Page and Carl Malone versus Dennis Rodman and Hulk Hogan.
Hulk
In
Hogan.
my
Yeah.
head, that had to be watched. Like, I had to see it. And then it even
Right.
got me to watching basketball because they were in the playoffs and they were fighting each other and they were selling the story. Like Dennis Rodman was missing practice to be on Nitro. Oh man, this is gonna be good. I gotta see this. It's probably not that great of a match going back and looking at it. I don't remember. I'd have to go back, but that got me to want to be. It was the lead up. You know what I mean? So I think that's just something that, like, I got a lot of things planned out, and I told my wife, I said, at this stage, I want to do things where I want to be helping younger talent, and I want to feel validated in creative. I'm an artist at the core. So if I go places, I want to feel like I'm adding to your product and I'm not just there. You know what I mean? So
Right.
anyway, sorry, went on a ramble. Romano rambling.
I mean, you're good. I mean, let's see. Like you were mentioning the State Theater, and I honestly feel like for the city of Albany that's a great venue. For the place of fact is it is. I mean, wrestling is theater.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just down to it's an entertainment. It's people want to
Yeah.
come to be entertained, and then what better like the hair, just the how old the building is, and all the history that's been in that building. It'd be a shame for wrestling not to be there.
It's not even that building, that area. Like Albany is such a, if you know, that's another thing. Like, people forget history, but Albany was like a hotbed for WCW, man. That little
Yeah,
area at the Civic Center, man, that I can remember knowing that's where, where everybody would always wait for autographs. Right there is where William Regal and Fit Finley fought to the outside. That's where Big Show beat Ric Flair for the world title. That's where Super Brawl was held. So it's got a lot of history to it within itself. So I wish we could find the right element of that town to get it more buzzing, but it's hard nowadays in that area. It's hard to get the word out.
yeah. Like you were saying too, though, if you flipped it and asked me what was my favorite match and why that was my favorite match, I have
Right.
something similar. It was for the way they build it, obviously, and it was WrestleMania 14 with Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels with Mike
Oh,
Tyson as the special enforcer.
bro,
I
it's a
love that. I
masterpiece.
love that.
It was everything up to it. I was like told the principal knew how much I wanted to see it because he knew he would talk to my dad, and the goal was I had to get AB honor roll to be able to get it, and I am just like in math and all, struggling
Hitting
in
the
classes
books.
and trying to stay on best behavior. And bro, and I was the Sean fan, and to see Sean lose and the emotion, I went outside and my buddy was a Stone Cold fan and I'm just mad. And he's like, yeah, yeah. And not knowing we wouldn't see Sean for 4 years. I mean, it was all, and Mike Tyson just he was the added little thing in it. The world was talking about it. You felt cool again to be a wrestling fan,
Yep.
because you're talking about like that 95 to 96. Nobody, you didn't have no, I didn't really have nobody to talk to about it. Nobody was watching it, but I was still watching it, but nobody else was. But man,
Right.
Mike
I
Tyson
remember going
pushing
through
Stone
school.
Cold.
I remember going when I was going through school that that there was a select few of us that were wrestling fans, and you could tell because we all had the graphic tees,
Oh yeah,
and,
get wrote up for wearing
like
the DX shirt.
yeah, or the Stone Cold ones with him flipping people off.
Yeah, yeah,
We just wore
yeah.
it to see if we
That's a
could
good
push
one, though,
that
man.
limit also. But
Yeah,
like it had all the elements of really in the situation. Yeah, there was a heel in the face, but you got Shawn Michaels, who everybody's hated. You know what I'm saying? Like they hate him, but they love to hate him, and they love him for it.
right.
All right, and then you had Tyson, who is a legitimate shooter. He could box your head off as the
Hmm.
special enforcer. So, and then but across from him, you got Austin, the BMF. Like you were saying, what being a heel in wrestling does for you. You can go out there and say those things that normally you can't get out, and I mean it's just straight, for lack of better words, BMF,
Yeah, I mean,
and
Austin was
just
that
those
person that you wanted to be.
right, and just
You know.
that those two personas click so well.
Yeah, yeah. Austin was the guy in the movie that was just trying to get by, and he was working hard. And it's like, why you got to mess with me, man? And Sean was the captain of the football team prick that he's too cool and he's gonna pick on you and he's gonna take your girl. And but by the end of the movie, Austin showed that's another element I always say. I always use movies as a good way to say like this. The Vince said it on Beyond the Mat. When he's drinking the water and he's just like, we make movies. It's a hard fact to swallow when you want to just believe in wrestling as pure wrestling. But when you accept that fact, then you get to kind of like separate. Now, I'm not a big fan on certain things. I'm not. I remember when we did the State Theater show with another company, and they had a bunch of other people there. Nobody, it wasn't anybody there. It was a disaster. But I remember a guy did like the Zach Morris freeze. Where if he's like, you freeze and you're in, those kind of things. I've never been a fan of those. I'm a fan of people say, well, how are you not a fan of that? And you do a lot of comedy stuff. Well, because all my comedy stuff has a realism base, you know?
Right.
Um, like, even like you say, like, let's say somebody like, what's his name? Santino. He does that dang thing where, what's it called? The Cobra.
The Cobra, yeah.
Silly. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think you should bump for it. Who am I to say that? Maybe like you get popped in the eye and then you hit him with a DDT. Okay, that's believable. It gets over, but I don't like the whole like what's the guys, the ants or whatever they are on Chikara. They do the grenade, where one of them has a fake grenade. But you got to make that work for you. I remember my buddy John Davis. I said, hey, he worked one of them. I said, well, it's Chuck Taylor. That's who does it. I said, well, what did you do? He's like, he threw it and I acted like I caught it and then I just chewed it up. So he's like, I acknowledged his gimmick without making myself feel bad about my version of the product. And that's a good worker
Right.
there where you go, okay, that's your thing. How can I make it work with not feeling like I'm making myself less than in this situation? So I don't know where I went with that tangent, but anyway.
All right. Well, being that we was talking about matches, what is your favorite match or moment that you've been a part of throughout your career?
Again, I'm just talking about this with my wife, and it's hard to say, but I would say my match again with Drew Game when I won the AIWF World Cruiserweight title at the State Theater because it was a hot crowd, some new fans. There was a lot of young kids, and everything just lined up. And man, God rest his soul. I love you, Drew. He he shined me up just marvelously. He healed it out to the end, and then when he put me over, he left the ring and came back to shake my hand. Like we did the performance, and then he kind of broke the fourth wall, but it was done in a way that made perfect sense. And that really holds up to me. I wish I had better footage of it, but you know as well as I do, that State Theater is so hard to get good footage with the lighting. But that was one of my favorites. Sometimes when the film ain't ever rolling, another one I had really good was Velvet Jones in the State Theater. Just it flowed so well. Uh, Matches with names. I mean, of course, I've wrestled guys like Honky Tonk Man and Tommy Rich and all that. But when you're wrestling those guys at that stage, you're very limited on what's going to go on. I would say
Well,
my
I
match with
seem to
Shannon Moore.
remember a tag team match with you where you and Tommy Rich teamed up and took on Kristen Helms and somebody else. I
Yeah,
forget who that was.
that was a fun match because I mean I got that picture of just me and him in the ring. But like I said, when you wrestle those guys, it's very limited what you can do because you want to feel like these guys you grew up with watching, that you want to feel like you could go with them in their prime, and that's just never going to be the case.
Right.
But I'll say that because Shannon Moore is in a relatively age gap of me because he got in like AJ and Hurricane and all them right at that last cup of coffee of WCW, and he was
Yeah,
still
when
fairly
they
young. He's
3 count or something like that.
yeah, which is kind of the inspiration for the pop star. But getting to go against him at Wild Adventures was cool because he was kind of the pump guy, and then I was the pop guy, so I represented what he never really wanted to be in WCW, but I am now. So it's kind of a cool thing, but I wanted to know I could go with a guy in this generation's level, or that ruthless
Right.
aggression era level. So that one was really good. It could have been better, but you know, I was glad to be able to do something of that nature. So me and Logan Stevens had like that. I believe it was a best of 7 match that Jerry, or it might have been a best of 5. I can't remember. I enjoyed those because I always loved those. My little bucket list. I like to do things that ever intrigue me. Now, one big one is the jailhouse match I had because I always envisioned this match. I just could never get it lined up. And if you remember, the original one was Big Boss Man and the Mountie. And it's
Right.
not a great match, man. But as a kid, I loved it because I loved the theatrics of the Mountie getting arrested. And he's like, "You're hurting me." Uh, but I was able to line that up, and I wanted to go under. I wanted to be the guy to go under. And I sold it. This is how much I believe. My mom was living with me at the time. I was helping care for her. I played it off like I was in jail so much that instead of just going straight home, I had my wife drive home, and then I came home and climbed through the window to sell it that I had been in jail all night. That way, when she talked in the community, she's coming from a real place. She believes it because she really thinks, "Oh God, he did go to jail." That's how much I love that. And I got to say, we were going to film all this stuff at the jailhouse, but that fell through. But that's where my creativeness. So that would probably be in that top 3 right there because of the creativeness of me getting arrested and had the cops and the whole theatrics. It was everything I love about wrestling. It was just we wrestled a solid match, but then we gave them what they came for. You know, we gave them the big payoff at the end. We even did a screwball finish where they thought Logan was going to lose, but we reversed the decision and da 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 da. I want to be creative in this business. My wife is a beautiful artist. She can draw anything you want. I can't do that. I can do that in a ring, though. I don't want to do paint by colors. And I think that's what a lot of wrestlers do is paint by numbers, and they're just like, all right, red is number 2. I want to abstract wrestle. I want to think outside of the box and what's going to entertain. So anyway, that would probably be number 1 now that I'm thinking about it, the jailhouse match.
Awesome,
I think I'm
awesome.
going to be your longest guest, by the way.
Yeah, probably, but it'll be okay. Where can the fans come to see you? What do you got coming up?
Let's see. Well, I got some surprises ahead that I got to keep under wraps. So um, something specific. But the very next weekend, uh, GCW, Buckhead, Georgia, got to be rolling skating ring. I'm headed back to GCW. It's legitimately tagged. It's part of the tradition of the original GCW. It's all linked together with the championships and everything. So it's pretty cool to be part of that history. But I'm wrestling Jared Michaels for the second time. And it's kind of a neat story to say, like, hey, you're wrestling the guy that helped train you. Me and him had a lot of falling outs more times than I count, but I admire him. I look up to him. I think he's one of the he defines the hashtag wrestling dad too. So I look forward to wrestling him again. The last time we wrestled, we had some we didn't have no wardrobe malfunction, but we had a ring malfunction. The bottom ring broke. The bottom ring rope broke altogether, and they just stopped the match. Legitimately stopped the match. So we get to come back and dwell more into this concept and see where it can go. I look forward to working him. I know it'll be easy. I know we'll have a great match. I'm looking for other places. I'm looking forward to EPW coming back. I know they got a big show coming up the same day. Unfortunately, I won't be there, but I know it's for a good cause. But I'm looking forward to what EPW's got planned before the end of the year. And always reaching out to new places, always trying to just feel creative and try new things. And you might see me back at CWFG. You might see me back at Fusion. You might see me anywhere, man. But at the end of the day, the most important part is me being a father. So, I'm going to make sure I'm at those baseball games or kickball games before I'm at a wrestling booking. So,
If you have any like merchandise links or anything like that, or plug your social medias also so the fans can find the pop star.
well, I did start a TikTok recently that just did some funny things, but to say this out loud to make it a reality. Outside of wrestling, I'm a mental health caseworker. More recently, my job is to help people with mental health get homes, to get housed, and then I help them with their emotions and stuff like that through after they get housed. But that's a passion of mine because I've dealt with a lot of these things, and attempting suicide and having severe depression and anxiety. So this TikTok eventually is going to turn into, if you've ever followed me on Facebook, those deep Romano ramblings, but I'm going to just do it more in person to where I give advice about, wrestling, where it relates to mental health and things like that. I don't even remember what my name is on there. You just have to look me up. But, of course, you can find me on Facebook. I'm looking more to getting back into merchandise. I might have, wink, wink, somebody that might be able to help start, this whole venture on figures maybe one day. But looking to getting some more shirts made and maybe have some other things lined up like the wrestling buddies and magnets. But those are all in the pipeline right now. So nothing out there right now. I'm just trying to help places right now. I'm trying to get I think everybody since 2020 is just trying to find their way again in what they are in pro wrestling. So.
Your favorite heel of all time?
Okay, favorite heel. It's gonna surprise you, and I got to tell him this when I met him a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna say Sergeant Slaughter. Might sound surprising, but I think during that time when he became the Iraqi sympathizer, that was real heat. He had to have
Yeah.
people come to his house and make sure there was no snipers for his wife, and going grocery shopping. That is a heel. Like, you turn your face on your country in a profession that at the time still had people believing the 100% to a degree. That's dedication right there. So that would probably be my number one. And if you want me to say anybody today, I'd say no one, because I truly don't believe there's anything. Even Cody Rhodes said it best. There is no such thing as a heel anymore. But I would say Sergeant Slaughter overall.
Yeah, nowadays it's which one you like the least.
Exactly.
But your favorite face of all time, I'm assuming, is gonna be Shawn Michaels.
That's my favorite wrestler, but when I read, some of the questions would have at hand, I thought about that, and almost surprised you. He's not my favorite wrestler. He's nobody. Even us both being figure marks, buying his figure so hard, but sometimes I get it to be part of the collection. But I'm gonna say John Cena, and that's hard to say, but I'll say why. He would be what you would want as a face for your company, right? He's
Right.
the most. He has done more Make a Wish wishes than anybody in the history of that company. He is well renowned. He hasn't had like any big skeletons come out of the closet that we know of, other than he got around, but nothing that he would get you in trouble as a face of a company. He promotes, positive things, and he's just a good role model. No matter how much us as the teenager and the teen, the 20 something and the 30 something, that we hated him, kids love him. Like, kids love John Cena, and to me, and he's a merchandise wheelhouse. Like,
Yeah.
you just change the color of the shirt and bam, it's gonna get sold. So I would say John Cena from a marketing and a PR standpoint. I'm
Like
thinking of it as a businessman now.
I've looked at the whole thing, from when he was prototype to him becoming the doctor of thugonomics, and then evolving into like this American hero that
Right.
regardless of if you liked him or not, the matches he was having on a regular basis, you couldn't help but watch.
Right. And people hate on him saying, like, well, he's only got 4 moves. Bro, I loved Hulk Hogan more than anything as a kid, tearing my shirts up and all that. But aren't most of his matches, I think the most different matches he ever had was the one with The Rock and the one with Warrior. Every other one was the standard same match from WWF to WCW. Probably TNA. I never watched his matches in TNA, but it's the same beat down, Hulk up, big boot, leg drop, take it to the house. But we
That's
loved it.
right.
We didn't, and that's another thing, is that I'm doing my best to look through wrestling through actual fan's eyes, not a smart mark fan, an
Right.
actual fan's eyes. And when you look at through that, you can see like why things happen the way they are. But yeah, he's who I would say I would want. You know what I mean? Because he identified. Yeah, as an actual my favorite face, it would be like a Shawn. It'd be Surfer Sting or stuff like that. But it's hard to turn off the business side of my mind being in it this long. But so
Right. All right. So, favorite Sergeant Slaughter match?
probably him and Hogan, at WrestleMania, like when him and Hogan, when Hogan finally got the just due. That's I always like stories that give you the end result, or the one where he beat Warrior for the title, where Macho hit him with the scepter and all that. I'm not saying that Sergeant Slaughter, I'm like just a super big fan of his matches, I'm just saying that was a great heel. But yeah, it would probably be.
Right.
He would probably even say that was his best too. You know.
Your favorite John Cena match?
Whew. Man, I put myself in a corner of giving you these two answers. Um, John
Well,
Cena
I like
match
it because it's right off the top of the head, so you know it's genuine. So it's gonna have to be the one that you remember the most.
Yeah, it's got to be legitimate. Whew. Think of one that really pulled me in. I would say one where Punk because he broke his nose, and from what I heard, they really hadn't really put anything together, and it was one of the few times it was pretty much a call on the fly, in this era on pay per view match. So I like the idea of that. Um, Sean, I can pull it back to my favorite wrestler. Him and Sean at Mania was a really good match. It proved Sean, Cena is a good wrestler at the end of that. That was a good match. So I'm gonna go Sean and Cena at WrestleMania.
Uh, if I had to pick the Cena match, it'd probably be the Triple H versus Cena at WrestleMania 22. I think it was
Yeah, that's a good one.
the the one where just those two entrances set the whole tone for everything. Like you knew it was going to be something special.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like John Cena coming out with the whole mobster,
With
shtick at the
CM Punk as
beginning.
one of them.
Yeah, and then Triple H doing his whole King of Kings thing. That was pretty dope.
And that's where the theatrics come in. It's like it wouldn't have meant as much if that match just was like Monday Night Raw had a wrestling match. It was that whole spectacle. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like if a tree falls and nobody's there, will it make a sound? Like you got to make them care about it. You know what I mean? It's if you go into the Tom Pritchard thing, he's gonna read this quote, guarantee you, and it comes from the back of a Kid Rock CD, but where he goes, I forgot how it says, you have to look it up, but it says basically the last line is if it's real, they'll feel it. And they'll remember they know that was part of it. Like they won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. So when you're talking about it, you're talking about how you felt. Not that the
Right.
match, if you went back, it's not that the match. I would have trouble going back and watch Shawn versus Brett WrestleMania 12 because it's an hour long, bro. I've watched it a dozen times in my life, but at the time, it affected me, big time, So, it's one of those how it makes you feel type of situations.
Right, and that's just like you were talking about the 60-minute match. Flair used to be notorious for it, and I don't know if you've seen who he's gonna have as his final opponents and what that whole match is yet.
Yeah, I
But
saw it.
I
Jeff
mean,
Jarrett and Jay Lethal
yeah, which I
and
mean,
his son-in-law.
I'm probably gonna watch that
Yeah, I
just
definitely have to
just
watch, man.
because like Flair, one of the greatest heels of all time.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the next question that I have. I said, what advice would you give to someone, looking to become a professional wrestler? Like,
My first thought when you said that, like my first word was gonna be like, don't.
I've
But
had that response already.
um
It's definitely something that gets said pretty often.
um hey brother, can I just pause real quick for you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me write that down.
Let me pause.
140,
All right, let me pause real quick where
104,
we're at.
104, 28.
was having saying that he couldn't breathe. We're going to take him to the ER right now. We'll have to finish it later.
to take him to the hospital, man. I'm watching my other two kids. I'll keep you posted. He is hunched over.